Hi everyone, welcome to this next video. So in this one we're going to be looking at expanding brackets. We're going to go through the basics, which are the questions we've got on the left hand side here, and then we're going to look at the ones on the right hand side which become a little bit more complicated, going through where we expand double brackets and then triple brackets as well. So let's jump straight in and look at this first example. The first thing you need to think about is whenever we're talking about expanding brackets, we are going to be multiplying. Okay, so what you need to remember there is that anytime you see a bracket, it means that this value is multiplied by what is in the brackets there. So we do the first value times the first value, which is 5 times x, which is 5x. Then the second thing you're thinking about is the first value multiplied by the second value there. So in this case, it's just 5 times 2 there, which gives you 10. So you end up with 5x plus 10. Now, you need to be aware that this and this can't go together because that's an x and that's a number, so therefore they cannot be put together. So my final answer here, this is just expanded and I cannot simplify that one. So let's look at the next example. The process is exactly the same, but ever so slightly different because we've now got two x's. So I'm doing 7x times by x. Well, 7x times x is going to just still be a 7, and x times x ends up giving me x squared. So that's my first part. And then what I'm doing is I'm saying 7x times by minus 5. Well, 7 times 5 is 35, but it's a minus, so it becomes minus 35. And I've still got this x involved, so it becomes minus 35x. So the process is exactly the same as the first one. First times first value times the second value. First times first value times the second value, but this time we've got an x squared and an x. Now remember, these cannot go together again because one's an x squared and one is an x, so I can't put those together. Let's now look at the next example, ever so slightly different. What we've effectively got is two different questions. So you can treat it as this is one question and then this as a question as well. And then we're going to combine our answer at the end. So let's go through the process like we've just done. So the outside times the first bit on the inside is 8 times x, which is 8x. And then I'm doing 8 times the 4, which gives me 32. Then I do exactly the same here, 3 times 2x, which gives me 6x. And then I end up doing the 3 times the 3, which is 9. Just being aware here that this is a positive 3 times the 2x, so that ends up making a positive 6x. Okay, now in an exam that would be your first mark, but then from there what we need to do is actually collect our like terms. So this is our simplify bit. We've got 8x, and then what we've actually got here is a plus 6x. So you're just doing 8x plus 6x, which is 14x. Understanding that obviously we can put those together because they're both x's. And here we've got plus 32 plus 9. They're both positive values. So all you're doing is 32 plus 9, and your answer ends up giving you 41. So in this instance, the answer to expand, first bit being this bit, so 8x plus 32 plus 6x plus 9, and then simplify is you collecting your like terms. So 8 plus 6 to get you 14, and then remember that's an x, and then 32 plus 9 to get you 41. So what you can do now is you can pause the video if you want to, have a go at this next one. Just being aware and being careful of the fact that there is negative values involved in this. So just be careful with your negative numbers and understanding your negative numbers. Or you can just watch me do it. I'm about to go through it, so let's crack on. First one, 7 times x ends up giving me 7x. So that's the first part. And then the second part, 7 times 2 is plus 14. So that left-hand side ends up being 7x plus 14. And then the right-hand side, we've got 5. That's a negative 5 times x, which gives you minus 5x. So make sure you are aware that is a minus 5. And now what we're doing is this minus 5 times minus 4. It's quite common that they give you something like this in an exam, so just being aware that that is a minus 5 times a minus 4, and when you are doing a negative times by negative, it becomes a positive. So that becomes positive 20. So that would be your first mark in the exam. Then we go through the same process here, the red part, so 7x. Now this is a minus 5x, so that negative value belongs to the x. So the negative sign that's in front of it is what you need to be aware of. So it's 7x minus 5x, which ends up giving you 2x. So just be really careful of that. And then you've got 14 plus 20. They're both positive. So your answer is therefore plus 34. Okay, so just being careful there that is a minus 5x, so it's 7x minus 5x to get you 2x, and then 14 plus 20 because the two negatives make the positive. Okay, what you can do again is you can pause the video if you want to, have a look at this one. So thinking about what happens when you multiply, when you've got an x squared multiplied by an x, and then thinking about collecting your like terms, you can pause the video and have a go if you want, or you can watch me again. So the process is the same. 5x squared times x will actually end up giving me 5x, but effectively that's an x on its own, which is x to the power of 1. You would add the indices, so that becomes x to the power of 3. Okay, then you're doing 5x squared times 2, which gives you 10x squared. There's no other x's involved in that, so it just stays as the x squared that we've got. Then the next part we're doing minus 3x squared times x, which gives you minus 3x cubed. And then from there, we're doing the minus 3x squared times the plus 4. So you're doing a negative times a positive, which becomes minus 12, because 3 times 4 is 12, and then x squared. So that would be your first mark in an exam. So again, that is the expansion part. And now what we need to do is just be careful with collecting our like terms. So the red parts are still going to be collected, being careful that that is a 5x cubed minus 3x cubed. The reason I can put those two together is because they are both x cubed. Okay, so 5x cubed minus 3x cubed is 2x cubed. Okay, so the cubed part makes it a like term. And then the purple bit here, the 10x squared, and this is minus 12x squared, ends up giving you exactly the same as doing 10 minus 12 minus 2x, but it's now squared. Now, what you need to be careful of is this and this cannot now go together. You can't cancel any of that out because this is a 2x cubed, this is a minus 2x squared. Because that's a squared, because that's a cubed, they cannot go together. Okay, so that's your basic expanding and simplifying. Now let's look and see what happens when we end up having something like this, where you've got two brackets next to each other. So the difference here is that there is a plus in between the brackets. There's a value on the outside. We've got a bracket, a positive number, then another bracket, whereas here the brackets are just right next to each other. Now going back to what we said at the start of the video, when you've got the brackets it means multiplied. So what we're actually going to do is do something I like to call the moon method. So we're going to do the first one times the first one, the first one times the second one, and then we're going to do the second one times the first one, and the second one times the second one. The reason I like to call that the moon method is because when you then look at that shape that is created, it looks a bit like a crescent moon. So let's go through that process. X times x, first of all, gives you x squared, and then x times 5 is plus 5x. So that's your first part, and then the top part, you're doing your 2 times your x, which is plus 2x, and then your 2 times your 5, which is 10. So that's your expansion. And then here, when you are collecting your like terms, being very careful, it's only the x's there that go together because this is an x squared, so that can't go with those parts. You got 5x plus 2x, which makes 7x, and then plus 10. So that would be your second mark. Okay, nothing else can go together. Just again, being careful, that's an x squared, that's an x, so they can't go together. Okay, again, you could pause the video using the method that I've just done. You could have a go up trying to answer this next one, or you can just watch me doing it and I'll go through it now. So x times x gives you my x squared. X times minus 7, that is a minus 7, so it becomes minus 7x. Then we do the top. 10 times by x is plus 10x. And now you're doing 10 times by minus 7, which gives you minus 70. So just being really careful there that you've got a negative there and a negative there because of that minus 7. That would get you 1 mark again. And then from here, let's collect our like terms. So x squared stays on its own. We've got minus 7 plus 10. If you think about negative numbers a bit like temperature, you're saying it's minus 7 degrees outside and it gets 10 degrees warmer. Therefore, it becomes 3 degrees. So minus 7 plus 10 is plus 3. Then the minus 70 stays as it is. That's your last mark. Okay, so the very last example we're going to go through here is 3 sets of brackets, and I'm going to show you a couple of different methods here as to what we could be doing to answer it. So let's start off. First of all, what you're going to do is you're basically going to ignore that last bracket, okay? So we're just very simply going to do the exact same process that we've just done. So we're going to go x times x is x squared, x times minus 3, minus 3x. Then we're doing 8 times x, which is plus 8x. And then we're doing 8 times minus 3, which is minus 24. Okay, so that's your first process. And again, in an exam, that would get you a mark. Or what we can do now is tidy this up. So it becomes x squared is minus 3 degrees outside, and it gets 8 degrees warmer. Therefore, it becomes 5 degrees and then minus 24. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to put that in a bracket. Okay, now what we've just done there, those 2 steps would get you 1 mark in an exam. So either of those parts would get you a mark. From here, what we're then going to do is bring down that 3rd bracket as well. And then work out from this point. I'm going to show you 2 separate methods that we can do here. Now the first one is again a very similar concept to the mu method. So the x squared multiplied by the x becomes x cubed. The x squared multiplied by the 4 becomes 4x squared. Then we do the 5x times the x, which is plus 5x squared. And then we do the 5x times by the 4, which is plus 20x. Now the last bit we need to tag on to this is you've got to do this n value multiplied by both parts as well. So you do minus 24 times x, which is minus 24x. And then you do minus 24 times by 4, which is minus 96. Okay, so all you're doing is following for that part and that part, the mu method is normal. But now you've got to do this last value times both parts as well. From here, you collect your like terms. So x cubed, there's no other x cubed, so that can't be collected with anything. But we've now got 4x squared plus 5x squared. So that makes plus 9x squared. Then we've got the 20x minus 24. So again, looking at the fact that this is an x cubed, these are both x squared, so they can go together. These are both x's. So 20 minus 24 is minus 4x. Think about it as it's 20 degrees outside. It gets 24 degrees colder. And then the 96, the minus 96, there is nothing else that can go with that. So it just stays as minus 96. This is your final answer. In an exam, you'd also pick up a mark here. You don't even need to get all the parts correct as long as you get over half. And then the last part there as your 3rd mark. Okay, now if that last process here, so if this process becomes confusing for you, what you can actually do is you can take what the first bracket, so the x squared plus 5x minus 24, and you could put it into a grid like this. And then the second bracket there, which is the x plus 4, you could just put separately like this. And then you are multiplying these together. So you're basically saying x times x squared, which will give you x cubed. Then you're doing x times 5x, which is 5x squared. X times minus 24, minus 24x. 4 times x squared, which would end up giving you 4x squared. Then you're doing 4 times 5x, which is your 20x, and you can put plus 20. And you're doing your 4 times minus 24 to get minus 96. So you can see I've got exactly the same values, x cubed, 4x squared, 4x squared, 5x squared, 5x squared, 20x, 20x, minus 24x, minus 24x, and 96. And then when you're thinking about collecting your like terms, you would be doing these two together, and you'll end up getting the same answer. Okay, so that video has just gone through your basics of expanding and simplifying from your very entry level, where you start off getting your head around how to do the process in its first instance, and then going all the way up to 3 sets of brackets, and the 3 sets of brackets would only be on higher. Foundation pupils should be able to do up to G, but the higher pupils will need to know how to do H as well. Okay, hope you find that useful, hope it helped, and I will see you all in the next video.